Hi folks, I'm Spencer, and on today's episode of Cult Mania we're looking at the directorial debut of Misfits frontman Glenn Danzig, Verotika. It's not out on DVD over here, so this is the best thing I've got. Based on the series of comics of the same name that are also written by Danzig, Verotika is a portmanteau anthology style film, with each story... Actually, no, I was about to tell you that each story is tied together in some way, but apart from the fact that this woman with sort of little devil horns turns up and speaks to you for about a minute, none of these stories are actually tied together in any way, shape or form. And to be honest, these intermissions don't even seem to tie together particularly. There are three stories. The first story follows a model who has eyeballs instead of nipples, who cries on an albino spider which turns into a demon that has lots of arms and it strangles people whenever she falls asleep. And I'll be honest with you, it's not as exciting as that makes it sound. The second story follows a stripper who cuts off other women's faces because her face is a bit disfigured, and then she wears the faces while she's doing her stripping, and there is a detective who turns up occasionally because he's looking for the face ripper, as he calls her. That's that one. The last story is about a countess who bathes in virgin blood to be young, because that's what they all do, I'm presuming. And that is literally the plot of that one, because there is just so much padding that I'm like, there is no story here, and this isn't even clearly long enough to fill up the rest of the film. The cast of the film is pretty much made up of nobodies, models and porn stars. I mean, you aren't even getting like one celebrity name who's doing this for the money. You are just getting a bunch of non-actors or people who perhaps moonlight as actors turning up and just standing in front of a camera, really. I mean, no one is going to make a career having been in Verotika. There is just no one in this film looks like they have ever been inside an acting school or anything. I mean, it is the most dire acting I have possibly ever seen in a film, and it is absolutely hilarious. I have never laughed so much at the acting in one film. I mean, there is the main character in the first story, and there are so many points where she has to do like a dramatic "no," and I laughed every single time she did it, because it was so just, there was nothing there. It was just fabulous. I mean, I couldn't even tell whether she was supposed to be like Russian or French, because her accent was all over the place. It turns out she's supposed to be French, because everyone in the first story is French. I mean, they're all American actors or actresses, and I mean, Danzig has said in interviews that they had a dialogue coach, and I'm like, that dialogue coach is the biggest rip-off merchant ever, because no one sounds like they are actually French. I mean, I could probably do a better French accent than those people. I mean, there is one guy, there's like this photographer character. I couldn't tell what on earth he was saying, because I couldn't hear the words over how loudly he was just trying to be French. I mean, I'm surprised he didn't just start shouting baguette every now and again. I mean, not that any of the actors have anything particularly worthwhile to say. I mean, the script for this film, I do not understand how anyone that was thinking of giving Danzig any money read this script and went, yes, these are words that I wish to hear a human being say. I mean, I'm not going to spoil much of it here, because part of the joy of watching this film is just finding out what on earth someone is going to say and watching them attempt to keep a straight face while saying it. But there is a fantastic part in the second story in which two detectives are talking to one another, and this might not be 100% accurate, but the dialogue pretty much goes, "What we've got here is pretty grisly." "How grisly?" "Pretty grisly, sir."
I've come to get your face.
I mean, the cinematography in this film is in no better state. I mean, there are shots in which either people are out of focus or only part of them is in focus. There's a shot where someone's holding a cigarette and the cigarette is in focus but their face isn't, despite the fact that they're talking, so clearly the face was supposed to be in focus. There are shots that don't appear to be lit properly. There are shots where people are placed really weirdly. There are some shots in which someone clearly bumps into the camera slightly. I mean, some of this comes down to the fact that I don't think it's shot on a very good camera, but I mean, you can still at least try and frame people properly. There is also, in the second story, a bizarre use of, I presume it's like a plug-in in the editing software that puts lens flare on everything, except it literally puts lens flare on everything. I mean, I'm pretty sure I noticed lens flare coming off a stripper's bikini, and it cuts the image into just tiny little ribbons. There's a bit where they do a close-up and it just takes up like a huge chunk of the top of the screen. What were they thinking? Also, nearly all of the first and a good chunk of the second story take place in unpainted white rooms in which someone has just put like a blue light in the corner. I mean, does Danzig not understand that paint exists? Coloured paint can be used. It's just bizarre. I mean, it looks like someone decided to make a version of Argento's Inferno, but only hired set designers of about the age of 4. But I have to say, all of this pales in comparison to Danzig's use of, it must be his favourite cinematic device, the zoom. I mean, I love a zoom, but not in the way that Danzig loves a zoom, because he will just have shots that zoom in and then they zoom back out again and then they zoom in again and they zoom back out again. I mean, there is a shot in the third story that is just a woman looking in a mirror, and she occasionally leans forwards towards the mirror and then she will lean back, but the camera will mimic her getting closer and going back. It's just ridiculous. I mean, this is part of the problem with the film, is I don't think Danzig is aware that he's supposed to tell people to cut, because there are so many shots that just linger for far longer than you would ever have them. Or perhaps he doesn't know that you can press a button on the editing software and make a clip shorter. It's just, I've never seen someone use so many zooms in one take. It's baffling. I mean, I can remember it, so I mean, perhaps this is the future of cinematography, that we will start using zooms in the style of a slide whistle. Often, a lot of these shots will feature naked or semi-naked women. I would say about 2/3 of this film is just taken up by looking at some form of titty. I mean, a lot more tits than bum. If you are looking for bum, you will leave this film disappointed. If you are looking for tits, you will have a field day. I mean, it does kind of make sense. I mean, the film's title is a play on erotica. The cast are mainly models and porn performers, so it does kind of make sense that he's going so heavy on boob. But I think we have found the cinematic replacement for Jess Franco, because since watching a Franco film, I've never seen anyone so unskilled at framing eroticism. I mean, it takes a special level of skill to hire a bunch of women whose careers are defined by being sexually appealing, and to just remove anything erotic from seeing them. It's just, I don't know how you can have, I mean, most of the second storyline is just taken up by shots of stripping or pole dancing, and yet there is just nothing erotic about seeing it at all. I mean, this is probably because, like I said, at least half of the second story is just aimless shots of people spinning round poles, and everyone looks so bored. Even the people who are supposed to be the punters looking at the stripping going like, aren't doing that. They're going like, I mean, there is a bit where someone like makes it rain, and it is the most pathetic making it rain. It's like, I've never seen so many people look like they do not want to be in a film. It's just, it does make you laugh. I mean, that second one, there is this whole set piece built around the skin masked faced stripper doing her performance, and it is literally that she walks out in a cloak, she's got some skull nipple pasties on, and then she gets a cape and just goes. It's just ridiculous. I mean, apart from the fact that most of the shots are just of her face, so you can't even see her going. It's beyond belief. At least when it comes to the special effects department, there are varying degrees of not great. I mean, in the third story, you get quite a lot more bloodletting than you get in the other stories. And I mean, there's a couple of bits where like people get their throats cut and they proper like spurt blood. That's pretty good. And I mean, you get like a chest ripped open and a heart pulled out. That looks pretty good. Although the chest, you can see where the glue that they have stuck this fake chest onto this woman, where it is sort of, you can see the glue has like splashed up onto where her normal body is. That's not great. But again, like in the second story, the faces that have been cut off, they look incredibly paper thin, and the faces that have got no actual face are they're horrific in a why did you think that was a good idea rather than a horrific in like a gore way. The eye nipples are very strange. I don't know whether it's that. I mean, I don't know. They just look very, very weird. And I mean, the albino spider demon thing with 6 arms and a pair of legs just looks ridiculous because it's so rubbery and bizarre looking. And this really bothered me. It has no willy. I mean, there are a lot of shots where they put people's like heads in front of where its junk should be, but then there is a shot where it pulls out and it doesn't have a willy. It doesn't have a smooth sort of Barbie doll effect. It is just, there's just like a gaping hole, and I'm like, there is a shot prior where it is like having sex with someone. So what is it having sex with? It's got no willy. I've not been this frustrated by lack of willy since I watched The Shape of Water. A lot of the time, any gore just pops into frame. If there was something that was going to be a bit tricky to film, they just didn't bother trying to come up with an excuse. I mean, in the second story, there is a woman who is attacked to have her face cut off, and you just see this knife swing, and then the next shot, a face is already off, it's in the killer's hands. And I'm like, I'm sorry, this film has come out 60 years after Eyes Without a Face, which has the entire sequence dedicated to cutting someone's face off and peeling it away, and it looks fantastic. And I'm like, and Verotika doesn't even bother.
Cause of death?
But to be honest, the like practical effects are nowhere near as bad as the CGI effects. I mean, oh my god. I mean, you see the albino spider before it becomes the demon when it is a spider, and I mean, it is awful. There is a shot in which it appears to be out of focus, and I am my mind is boggled by the fact that you can make CGI out of focus, but Danzig's team have found a way. I mean, in the third story, it's set in the past, and there's this bit in which they put a castle in the background of the shot, and it's too big, the lighting on it isn't right. They've tried to make it look out of focus because it's a shallower depth of field, and it's awful. And there's a bit of fire in the last one that is just doesn't look like any sort of fire has ever looked, and that doesn't help that there's like the fire in the foreground is CGI, the background is CGI, so there's just these people that look real with this foregrounded fire and this back. It's awful. All of the sound in this is poo. I mean, Danzig himself has written the soundtrack, and when I saw that on the credits, I thought, okay, this could mean at least that the soundtrack is going to be interesting. No. Most of the score is just like Baby's first horror movie soundtrack. There is like a guitar tune that plays over the opening credits, which at least you can sort of tell that sounds more like Danzig's solo career stuff. But, I mean, the rest of the score is poo. There are a bunch of pop-scored sort of tunes that are especially used whenever like the stripping is happening in the second one. I'm pretty sure there is a Danzig tune, and even he sounds bored on that. If it isn't him, he's found someone who does a very good impersonation of him sounding very bored. But even worse than the soundtrack is the recording of the dialogue and any of the diegetic sound, because it's either tinny, it's mixed poorly. There are a bunch of points where it sounds like all of the sound was recorded while someone was sat in a toilet cubicle. I didn't notice any bad lip sync, which makes me presume that it is all just the sound from the set. But I wouldn't be surprised if something was added in post. It's just... Again, it's been a long time since I've seen sound design this incompetent. But... I'll give it credit, at least the film has been consistent up until this point. If you can't already tell, this film is bad. I mean, I had seen people comparing it to The Room or to Plan 9 from Outer Space. That is part of the reason that I wanted to watch it. I actually signed up to Shudder just to watch Verotika, and it was a brilliant decision. I mean, I think this is possibly the worst made film I have ever seen. I think this is probably a worse made film than The Room, because at least that film has some vague technical competency. But, all that being said, it is an absolute laugh. This is going to be a cult movie hit. It is fantastically bad. It is one of the best so bad it's good movies I've ever seen, and I'm really glad that it is Glenn Danzig that has made this, because it means that it will reach an audience and it will be remembered. Because, I mean, you can understand why I should have picked this up for October, because it is going to go down so well at Halloween parties. I think, watch it. I mean, just watch it, because you will have a laugh. If you like bad films at all, there is just endless treats for you here. But I think, you know, if you are at a party and you get a bit drunk, don't get too drunk, because if you get too drunk you'll get distracted. But get on the right side of drunk, that you can laugh and joke with the people you are sat with, because it is just phenomenally bad. I mean, I would happily watch this again. I mean, to be honest, I just want to watch it again because I want to watch the horrendous French accents at the start, because I have not laughed that much at a film in so long, whether it be a comedy or whether it be unintentionally laughing. I mean, I think that perhaps the last story does let it down a bit, because it's got a bit more production design, but it's got a lot less dialogue, and it is the dialogue that makes this film, and just the random editing. Oh, another thing, because I haven't done a section on editing, but I'm going to bring it up now. There are points where you get these little flashes of black screen and it feels like they've not dragged all of the clips together quite close enough. They don't feel intentional. But again, it just adds to the weirdness. I mean, you have to watch it. I can't do this film justice. I don't want to spoil so many of the fantastic moments. I mean, I wrote notes on every little weird moment that came up, but I can't bring myself to put them in the video because you need to see them to believe them. And please do watch it, because the film ends and the horny woman tells you that she's got more stories to tell you and that she wants you to come back. So Danzig clearly wants to make a second one, and please, everyone, go out and watch this because I want to see him try and do this again. But that is just my opinion. Are you now going to watch Verotika? Have you seen it, and did you have absolute belly laughs while watching it? Let me know down in the comments. Like and subscribe so that you don't miss any more videos, and I'll see you next time. Oh my word, this is the worst film I've ever seen. And I can't wait to see it again. I'm keeping Shudder just to watch this again.